Hi there, it's Lori at Rising Tides Healing Center, and I'm just jumping on today to talk to you a little bit more about early EMDR intervention services. You may have noticed on some of our social media accounts that we are in the process of offering a free webinar on November 17th at 2 o'clock to talk a little bit more about early EMDR intervention services. So I guess just to begin, I wanted to tell you a little bit more about EMDR if you're not already familiar. So EMDR is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. It's a form of psychotherapy that was initially discovered in the late 1980s by Francine Shapiro, and it's been gaining a lot of traction and research and studies as a treatment for PTSD and trauma symptoms. It's actually grown beyond treating PTSD into other mental health conditions like anxiety, depression, eating disorders, addictions. It's something that I became trained in a couple of years ago myself. I'm now a certified EMDR trainer and a consultant in training, and a number of my team members are trained in EMDR as well. So our experience to date is we've primarily been using this modality for individual treatment and for people who come into our clinic who have experienced a trauma or have a diagnosis of a mental health condition. We use EMDR to help them effectively reprocess some of the memories, the triggers, the experiences that they've had that have been continuing to cause them some distress. So far, to date, we've been using it primarily as an individual intervention, and most often the clients that we work with have experienced a trauma in the past, whether that's 1 year, 5 years, 20 years, or a lifetime. Most of the time we're working kind of across the lifespan to help people adapt the trauma that they've experienced in the past so they don't have to keep experiencing it today. So kind of the science or the theory behind EMDR and why it works is the adaptive information processing model, which is in our brains and in our head. And it's all about how our memories get stored. So people who have a PTSD diagnosis or experiencing trauma symptoms often are triggered by a memory, an emotion, a stimulus that triggers that part of their memory network. So it often is disjointed. It doesn't have access to the wider network in our brain to store it effectively. Lots of us carry around bad memories or memories of distress, but we don't relive them on a regular basis because we have been able to effectively process and store them. That's not the case for people who have been exposed to either a single incident trauma or a continuum of traumas across their lifespan. So that's how EMDR works. It works by taking a memory, adapting it. So when we're working with individuals, we're helping them to identify the memories or the triggers that are contributing to their distress. We're kind of using their brain networks to help adapt it and heal it where it belongs. We're kind of merely the guides in helping people to do that. With early EMDR intervention, the approach and the technique is a little bit different because the memory or the event or the experience is still recent. We typically talk about early interventions being within the 1 to 3 month mark after an event or an episode, but it can be longer depending on the situation. So when we're talking about a recent traumatic event, we're often talking about either a single incident trauma, a motor vehicle accident, witnessing violence, a community disaster, but it also can be something, that chronically has happened over a period of time, such as living in a war zone or an area that's been affected by, I think of things in the media like public shootings, school shootings, something that has an impact over time on a whole community. Actually, a pandemic would be a very good example of a traumatic episode that doesn't have one single moment or one single event, but it's having an impact on a lot of people over a period of time. So the reason why we became interested in early EMDR interventions is because we started thinking about or recognizing that a lot of the people that we work with, are kind of coming to us after the fact. It takes a little bit of time for people to recognize they're dealing with a PTSD or a trauma symptom. So we don't tend to see a lot of people imminently after their trauma because it hasn't, it kind of hasn't settled in and had the impact on their life yet. So we've been working with a lot of people, who may have been impacted 6 months, a year or longer from the time of their traumatic incident. So with early EMDR intervention, there are sort of some protocols that we can follow because, as I already explained a little bit, when we have a traumatic incident, it gets fragmented in our brain if it doesn't get processed the way it should have gotten processed for us. So it's why two people can be exposed to the same, incident and experience and not have the same impact or outcome. So with early EMDR intervention, we're actually trying to help process the memory before it settles in and creates problems for the person down the road. So early EMDR interventions are very much about prevention. We really want to use this intervention to help people not develop PTSD or trauma symptoms, but it's also treatment at the same time. It's not just kind of talking about what happened. It's not just about self-care. It's not just about, improving resiliency, although those things are part of it and they're important too. It's two things. So it's about helping people in the early phase after a traumatic event, and it's about helping them, prevent anything from showing up down the road, because it's not possible. We don't always know. There's no criteria to know who's going to become impacted by PTSD, because if we knew we had that ability to target those people that might get impacted, that would make our work a whole lot easier. But we don't always know who those people who are going to experience distress are. So what we're offering, or what we want to talk about, are ways to take this service that we offer and bringing it into locations where people are more likely to be impacted by a traumatic event or experience. So we're thinking about workplaces, community groups, a lot of the work we do with people who, are through, have been exposed to a traumatic event at work or through their insurance. We see people through car accidents or through other injuries who are off work for various reasons. So I guess that's why we're thinking about, if there's a way we can bring something to employers, to locations where we can prevent these impacts before they settle in, that's what we want to do. In early EMDR intervention, there's a couple of ways of providing the service. There are individual treatments that we call recent event protocols or recent episode protocols, but there's also group protocols where we can work with a group of people who have been impacted by an event or a situation, and the intervention is done kind of collectively. But the part that I really like the most about this, and I think would appeal to people who may not have responded to traditional crisis management services, is that there's no sharing of the traumatic experience. Everybody's processing in a group model independently. So we use a template. We have a guided process that we would use to do group EMDR. And although we're together and we share in the benefit of being with other people who have been impacted, we develop our resources, our strengths. There's a lot of work that goes into helping people use what they have to help them cope. We're also doing that treatment piece and working on the actual traumatic memories in a group, but we're doing it individually and relying on our brains to take people where they need to go with that processing. So it's an incredible process. I've participated in it myself, and I've watched videos from the creator of the GTEP model, which is Elon Shapiro. I've heard him speak a number of times. I really believe this model could help a lot of people to not become impacted by what they've been experiencing. So in the webinar, we're going to talk about things in a little greater detail about what it looks like, how it works. Of course, there is some criteria. There's a little bit of screening that we would want to do in assessing appropriateness for being in a group setting, but we also have these individual protocols that we can use with people too. So we just really kind of wanted to get the word out. As you can see from the length of this video, it's not something that can be really succinctly described in one social media post. So we're extending the invitation that if this is something that sounds like it would be useful to you or to your community or to your employment setting or to somebody you know, we're just asking you to join us for our webinar when we're going to talk about this in a little greater detail. We'll link the registration in the comments below so that you know how to do that. And yeah, we just really thank you for your time and your interest, and we're excited to offer this. And if you have any questions, never hesitate to reach out to us. You can find us under Rising Tides Healing Center on social media or on our website, or give us a call. We'd be glad to hear from you. Thank you.